right. Hello, everybody.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Celeste Rose, and I'm a designer here at Circular Economy Manufacturing, and I'll be today's hostess. Welcome to our virtual tour of SIMS Municipal Recycling. Today, you'll be watching and learning exactly what happens to the plastic in your NYC recycling bin. On the panel today, we have co-founder and director of Circular Economy Manufacturing, Barent Roth. We have Maite Ortiz, who's our workshop coordinator. And today it's our great pleasure to be hosting Kara Napolitano, our outreach and education coordinator at SIMS. So without further ado, Barent, take it away.
Sure. Hello, my name is Barent. I'm the director and co-founder of Circular Economy Manufacturing, and we are a design-driven manufacturing company that is using a solar-powered microfactory to create products from single-use plastic. If we can go ahead and advance, get that to roll forward. There we go. Awesome. So this is what we are planning to have on Governor's Island later this summer. It is a portable, solar-powered, 20-foot high-cube micro factory that we're putting into a 20-foot high-cube shipping container, where we're taking single-use plastic, shredding it, and then taking those shredded flakes and turning them into durable, reusable products. So as part of the education on the circular economy, we're trying to get people to understand that we need to transition from a linear to a circular way of doing business. So the old model was taking materials out of the ground and quickly turning them into products that were used for a very short period of time, and where they were eventually going to either be burned or buried, or worse, end up leaking into our ecosystem. Only a very small percentage is getting recycled. That's why we want to educate you today about the importance of recycling. What we're trying to do is increase that number, and with that input, take the recycled material, add solar energy, and turn it into usable products. This all fits within the larger context of the circular economy. So this is a diagram put together by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, a terrific organization that we greatly admire. And what they, as a design-driven company, we try and create everything as a sustainable design-driven company, we try and fit everything into either a technical cycle or a biological cycle. So as you look at the screen on the right, you have the technical cycle. So this is glass, metal, plastics. And on the left, we have the biological cycle, where it's wood and food and plants. And if we were, as designers, to design everything in one of those two categories, then we eliminate the concept of waste. And that's really the goal. And as you can see, first we want to try and maintain and repair and refurbish. And if those things aren't available or possible, then at the very least, we want to make sure that we're recycling. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. In terms of our company, our process is all about the technical cycle. Our first product is about the biological cycle. We're going to be launching on Kickstarter later this summer a portable compost collector, a food scrap collector that you can use and store inside your fridge and collect your compost. So we're trying to address all aspects of the circular economy, and tonight we're incredibly thrilled to have Kara join us. She does an amazing job with my class when I teach sustainable design at Parsons, the New School, and seeing what an amazing job she did virtually during the last year during this pandemic. I thought it would be terrific to have her come and participate in one of our circular economy manufacturing workshops. So we're delighted to have you tonight, Kara.
So as Barent was saying, we're having these workshop series in order to not only raise awareness, but to educate further on what is the circular economy and how can we participate in it, and how can we bring it to life, not only so that it becomes a reality, but that it takes care of us, the planet, equally, and We allow the growth not only of ourselves, but also further on our children's as well. Plastic is often vilified, although it is a very, very cool material. And with so much history behind it, it's important to keep it in a circular loop so that it can benefit society as much as it can without compromising our well-being or the planet's. So the work that SIMS Municipal Recycling does is incredibly impressive and super cool, and we're super excited to have Kara here to walk us through all of it all. So Circular Economy Manufacturing is more than happy to welcome you and to talk away. Please take it away. Thank you, Kara.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be here. Thank you everyone for tuning in wherever you are joining from. Welcome. I am tuning in from Queens in New York City, but SIMS is located in Brooklyn. And I will show all of that to you shortly. I think, yeah, there's a pretty picture. So this is SIMS Municipal Recycling. I am Kara Napolitano, the Education and Outreach Coordinator. And let me get a little bit of movement for you. So this is our facility. We are located on an 11-acre pier right on the waterfront in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. So you can see some of our large buildings here. You can see a nice view of New York's Upper Bay. That's Staten Island in the background. We get lots of great views, truly, of the city and Jersey City. But a couple of neat things you can see from this vantage point. You can see our solar panels. So we do have one of the largest solar arrays in Brooklyn. And you can also see our wind turbine. I'll switch to the next slide. You should be able to see it very well there also. So we also have a 100 kilowatt wind turbine right in front of our facility. The turbine can generate up to about 2.5% of the energy we use, and the solar panels can generate up to about 12.5%. So on the sunniest, windiest day, we can be running by about 15% from renewable energy, which we're excited about, but hopefully we'll have more solar panels one day. That would be great. So SIMS Municipal Recycling is our company name. But the type of facility we are is what's called a material recovery facility, or a MRF. So perhaps you have never heard of a MRF, but a MRF, material recovery facility, aside from being a rather silly and fun acronym to say out loud, MRF, 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 it's actually a very common type of facility. A MRF is a sorting facility for recyclables. MRFs exist around the country. They exist around the world. Because think about how we recycle, especially in this country. We place different types of materials, metal, glass, plastic, into the same bin. It is then the job of the MRF to sort those materials out so that they become valuable again and can be sold to the appropriate reprocessor, to the appropriate company that will remanufacture them and recycle them. So at SIMS, we are receiving and sorting 100% of New York City's municipal recycled metal, glass, plastic, and cartons. And that ends up being about 1,000 tons of materials each day, which is a lot as far as MRFs go. 1,000 tons is a lot. What I tell the kids is that's the same weight as about 200 medium-sized elephants. So 1,000 tons a day. That number actually makes us the largest MRF in the country by volume. I recently learned, for some reason I'm hesitant to update the slide, but we are actually the largest MRF of this kind in the world. New York City also has the world's largest sanitation program, or sanitation department, I should say. So we have a lot of firsts when it comes to waste in New York City. I don't know if that's the category we want to be winning in, but we currently are. So here we are, located right on the waterfront in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. You can also see barges. This is a main way that we will move recyclables through the city, and that recyclables will come to us at SIMS. So a nice view of the barges there. So that's a little bit about SIMS, who we are, what we do. But I was asked to give this the spin that I give some of my presentations and talk about designing for recycling. What are some of the attributes of materials that make them challenging or sometimes even impossible to recycle? And what are the materials or material attributes that might be easier to recycle? So as I take you on this tour, I'm going to be commenting on these concepts as well. But before I do that, there are just a couple of things I like to clarify about recycling in general. Of course, The goal of recycling is circularity, right? We want to assist in building this circular economy, the dream of the circular economy, which equals sustainability, because linear economy does not equal sustainability. The take, make, waste culture is simply not sustainable. So recycling's goal, of course, is to help generate the circular economy. It doesn't always succeed, but that is the goal. But things to remember as we work towards that goal. First, recyclable doesn't always mean better for the environment, okay? It may for some materials, but it depends on a lot of factors. So just because something is recyclable or designed to be recyclable, that doesn't automatically mean it has a lower environmental impact. However, studies have shown that materials that are made with recycled content, so let's say this water bottle was made out of 50% recycled plastic, post-consumer recycled plastic, meaning plastic that has been used by a consumer and then recycled. That fact does tend to consistently lower a material's environmental impact, being made with recycled content. Interesting. So another thing to remember is that recycling programs differ in different locations. So I am going to mention New York City's recycling program tonight, but I'll also mention common trends because, what we accept in New York City is different from what they'll accept down in, Dallas, Texas, or San Jose, California, or Portland, Oregon. It's going to look slightly different depending on where you are in the country or in the world, because different areas have different capabilities, basically. And then the last thing to remember is just technologies and materials will change over time. So I'm focusing on the current state of recycling. It'll probably be the same next week. It'll probably be mostly the same next year. But over the years, hopefully as we move closer to circularity, things will change. But here's a snapshot of right now. So the recycling process, right? I told you what a MRF is, but here are all the key players in this process of recycling. I'll break them down for you. So a MRF, again, it's a sorting facility. Recyclables come to the MRF, they're all mixed together. There's a lot of fancy technology and sometimes a lot of human power at some smaller MRFs that sorts the materials out. The materials are then sold to the appropriate reprocessor. Metals go to a smelter, plastic goes to what's called a plastic reclaimer. It will be turned into these little pellets that are actually pictured there. Paper will go to a paper mill, and so on. And in that step, the materials aren't actually made into the next thing that they will be in their next life. They're really just prepared to be that next thing. Like I said, the plastic is pelletized, the paper is made into great big rolls of paper. At that point, the material is sold to a brand or manufacturer. That's generally when it is made into whatever product or package it will be next. And that's a step in the process that I do like to highlight because of its importance and because of its invisibility. When we put things in the recycling bin, we don't always think, oh, someone has to buy this and use this for it to actually be recycled and actually be recyclable. But that's the reality of it. Things that are accepted in your local recycling program, they are accepted in your program because it has been found that someone wants to buy them, that there is an ability to reprocess and then effectively recycle that material. So just, something to consider as we look at this whole process. Once brands buy or manufacturers buy the material, they use it in their products or packaging, and then of course sell it back to the consumer, who hopefully has the ability to recycle it once again, at which point, whoever's responsibility it is to pick up your waste. In New York City, we have the New York City Department of Sanitation, again, the largest sanitation department in the world. I'm personally a very big fan of them. But we have DSNY, Department of Sanitation of New York City. But depending on where you are, it might be your local municipality that collects your waste and recyclables. It might be a private waste company that does it. That also is a very kind of local, it's just localized. It depends on where you are, who picks up your waste. So they'll collect your recyclables and then bring them to the MRF, and then the journey continues. And that is the recycling process wrapped up like a present and tied up with a bow. It doesn't always go that smoothly. There are plenty of potential barriers in each of these steps and between the steps. But if all goes well, that's the process that you're looking at. So just to talk for one more moment on this slide about, if we're determining if something is truly recyclable, basically it has to be able to move through this loop, right? It has to be able to sort at a MRF. There has to be a technology that exists to turn it into something new. There has to be someone who wants to buy it. And if you get a yes to those answers, if that's all existing, then it's probably going to be accepted in your local recycling program, and it's probably going to be recyclable. So now let's.
Hey, Kara. Oh,
yeah.
Hey, Kara. We're having a question
great.
from our YouTube channel. Kenny Arnold would like to kind of reemphasize. His question is, so what's recyclable is determined by companies that can purchase the plastic and transform plastic.
Kind of, yeah. That's a big part of it. That is a big part of it. It's, will a company buy it? Is there a process that exists that can break it down and turn it into something new? That's another big question, because while something like this, a water bottle, that's really made of one material. So it's fairly easy to break it down, reprocess it into something new. But then you look at something like a chip bag. This is made of a lot of different types of material. This is a multi-layered material. You've got some plastic, you've got some ink, you've probably got some metal, that keeps the chips delicious and crunchy, and then you have another layer of plastic on the inside. That's a lot of work to pull all of those layers apart. And then what you're going to have, like this much plastic and this much metal. So it's not worth it. That's another thing that can determine it is how easy and cost effective and energy efficient would it be to actually break the thing down, or would it actually be better for the environment, weird, to just send it to the landfill? Sometimes it actually is. Crazy.
Thank you, Kara.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to move on from this. And as I go on, I do sort of look at each of these steps in a bit more detail. So first, what is actually recyclable? As a consumer, as a resident, what can we actually put in the bins? So in New York City, to be clear, we have a dual stream recycling program. We are to place our recyclables in two separate bins, the blue bin and the green bin. The gray bin is for trash or garbage. Much of the country has a single stream recycling program where all recyclables go in one bin, but in New York City, dual stream. In the blue bin, 4 types of materials: metal, and in New York City, you can recycle anything that's made of metal. Anything that is mostly metal. Tin cans, soda cans, of course, but broken microwaves, broken refrigerators, broken air conditioners, as long as they're broken around beyond repair, you can recycle anything that's metal. Glass is a bit more limited, only bottles and jars. Any bottle or jar, any shape, size, or color, but only bottles and jars, because the companies buying the glass from us, maybe you can guess what they're making. They're making bottles and jars, right? So that's the type of glass that they need. They can't use your ceramics. They can't use your coffee pots or window panes or mirrors. That's a different type of glass, and it won't mix with the bottles and jars. So bottles and jars only. And that's true for every recycling program I know of in this country. If they want your glass, bottles and jars only. So cartons are the third material. Please remember, cartons go in the blue bin in New York City. Cartons go in the blue bin, from the big carton to the small juice box. It all go, even the rectangular looking cartons, they go in the blue as well. And then rigid plastic. So in New York City, you may place any hard plastic in your recycling bin. Here's the test I do, and this is how I teach the kids to identify what's rigid plastic. If you put it on the counter and it keeps its shape, it is rigid plastic, and you may place it in your blue recycling bin in New York City. But if you put it on the counter and it just kind of deflates and falls over, then it's soft plastic. And actually in elementary school, student taught me this. They taught me if it's plastic and you can smash it, you should trash it. Okay, so rigid plastic, I know, that was from a kid. That was not for me. I can't claim that. So that's the blue bin. In the green bin, we put all mixed paper and cardboard. In New York City, if you can rip it, you can recycle it in the green bin. Greasy pizza boxes are fine in New York City. Just please take the pizza out of the box. Don't leave it in there. It happens and it's not helpful. So everything else then goes in the trash. If it's not one of the materials I just listed, it goes in the trash. Except we also have this bin. And now this compost bin, right? Curbside composting. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I know you'll talk about this at other times, which is wonderful, but I do have to drop this into the mix. New York City had a curbside composting program. Some homes had access, some schools had access. It was put on pause during the pandemic. It will be back in the fall. So please remember the brown bin is what I tell people. Remember the brown bin. In the brown bin, we can put all of our food scraps, food soiled paper, and even compostable plastics. You know, if a plastic says certified compostable, you can put it in this brown bin. If it doesn't say certified compostable, you can't. I hope that that's clear. So the materials from these brown bins were going to large industrial composting facilities. Even though that is not happening, but again, it will be back. That is not happening now. There are still community gardens throughout the city and throughout the country. Lots of cities, lots of towns are doing this. There are gardens that will accept your food scraps and turn them into compost. Now, they might not want the meat and the bones and the dairy and the compostable plastics, but there are many other things that they will accept. And I encourage you, wherever you are, just see if you can compost in your backyard or at a garden or in some sort of program. Please look into this and try to participate, because compostables make up 1/3 of your waste stream at least. Sometimes it's more. It's usually between 30 and sometimes 50% of what you throw away could be composted. So please, if we can get on the composting train, we will be moving in a good direction. And I really encourage that. Okay, now I told you what we recycle in New York City. Real quick, this is the big 5. These are the 5 materials that are accepted in most, if not all, recycling programs in this country. First, metal, soda cans, and tin cans. Everyone wants the soda cans and tin cans. They're easy to reprocess, easy to sell, great market. Glass, bottles, and jars, right? I said that before, bottles and jars only. Plastic, bottles, and jugs. These are the plastics that have the best market. So also known as plastic number 1 or PET and plastic number 2 or HDPE, okay? And then mixed paper and cardboard. This stuff is going to be accepted again in most, if not all, programs in the US and possibly in other places as well, but I like to focus on the US because it's what I can speak of with the most confidence. So after you do your part, after you put the thing into the bin, that's when whoever picks up your waste is going to pick up your waste. So in New York City, we have DSNY trucks. They will collect trash and recyclables in separate trucks. The trash goes to landfill and incineration, but the recyclable trucks come to us in Brooklyn at SIMS. However, many of the recyclables we receive come on barges, great big boats that can fit up to 100 truckloads of recyclables. So that's 100 trucks, that don't have to drive all the way to us in Brooklyn from the Bronx or Queens or other far off locations in New York City. Instead, a barge will be pushed by a tugboat down the East River to our Brooklyn facility. And then it all ends up right here on our tipping floor. So this is the giant room where recyclables arrive on trucks and barges, and they wait for us to sort them. So we are now at the MRF. This big claw in the background is scooping recyclables off a barge and then throwing them on to the pile. And then this front end loader is pushing recyclables into the sorting system. So this, what you're watching right now, is happening at SIMS 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. It never ends. We do take Sundays off, but other than that, it never ends. Sometimes it gets very big. This is another shot of the pile. I've seen it larger than this, honestly, after holidays and after snow days. So you see the crane unloading the barge, and then again, the front end loader pushes recyclables into the system. So if you look a little closer at that pile, though, you will see there are actually 2 piles. Because remember, New Yorkers, if you're a New Yorker, you separate your recyclables into 2 bins, okay? And they actually keep them separate in the collection trucks. Many are split body trucks with one side for paper and one side for metal, glass, plastic. At SIMS, we keep it separate as well. So we have a pile for the MGPC, or metal, glass, plastic, and cartons. And we have a pile for the paper and cardboard. Now, since the paper and cardboard is already on its own, it's already separated, all we have to do is load it onto a great big truck and send that truck to the paper mill. So there actually is a paper mill on Staten Island in New York City that receives and processes most of New York City's recycled paper. These photos are from that paper mill. This is not their pulper. This is like a holding tank, but they have at this paper mill a giant pulper. It's so big that all of New York City's recycled paper gets dumped into. It is then turned into pulp, and contaminants, meaning things that are not paper, will be screened out. And then it goes through the paper making process and comes out as these giant rolls of paper, some of which are actually used right there on Staten Island, where they also have a box making plant, and they're making pizza boxes out of New York City's recycled paper. So kind of a happy local pizza story for you there. But the thing I like to just make clear about paper is that paper mills have varying capabilities. So our mill that we use in New York City is very large. So it's able to accept a fair amount of contaminants. You know, they're able to screen things out fairly well, and they'll really stick to, if you can tear it, we can take it. You know, if it has a layer of plastic on it, that's not great for them, but they can handle a certain amount of that. If it has glitter on it, or like soft touch on it, like some of those pretty boxes with perfumes or something have that shiny soft touch, it's not great for them, but they can take a certain amount of it. However, some smaller paper mills, they really might not be able to process that stuff, and it might cause big problems actually for them. So they may have ways of sorting it out and getting rid of it before it goes into their pulper, which means it would probably end up as trash. So the rule that I follow and share with paper, if you want it to be recyclable, anything that's not paper is not ideal. You know, paper only. You go mixing in inks and shininess and decorations and what have you, it gets harder and harder to effectively recycle it. So that's paper. But now we're back in Brooklyn. We need to sort the metal, glass, plastic, and cartons. So let's get sorting. This is the thing we use to sort New York City's metal, glass, plastic, and cartons. This sorting system overall is 2.5 miles of conveyor belts if stretched from end to end. It is operating 24 hours a day, 5, sometimes 6 days a week, 3 shifts a day, 2 shifts a week for cleaning and maintenance, 33 workers per shift to run the system. It's very big, but it doesn't seem like that many people to run it, though, 33 people. So let's see how it works. Well, let's look at it, actually. Here's the video of the system. So you can see the twisting and turning conveyors. They go up, they go down, they go all around, much like roller coaster, water park. And you can see it's full of different types of technology. You see the orange boxes, you see things falling, kind of over here and over here, right? Different processes for each material. So I'll break them down. First, of course, we have to load the system. We saw this before, but we need to get materials from that great big pile into the system. So the front end loader pushes things in. Now our view is going to slightly shift. And after the front end loader pushes the materials into the entry point here, they travel up this conveyor belt and drop into the Liberator. Very serious sounding. So the Liberator is a slow speed shredder. And we have it at our facility because in New York City, residents are instructed to leave out their recyclables in clear plastic bags. Now, much of the country does not do this. But in New York City, because we just don't have space on every street corner for bins big enough to hold all of our waste and all of our recyclables, this is why we use the plastic bags. It contains materials, keeps them from blowing into the environment, makes collection possible, really. So the Liberator then rips the plastic bag open. Our view is going to zoom in. And then the materials and the shreds of plastic bag both drop onto this bottom conveyor belt here, and everything enters the system. So after it enters, the first bit of technology that it will pass over will be the disc screens. And this is where we sort glass. So these metal rods spin. And as they spin, perhaps you can imagine, materials just roll right over the top. So you see a lot of plastic there, maybe some metal, so many plastic bags that should not be there but are. You know, we expect they're plastic recycling bags, but all those single-use plastic bags should not be there. But people love putting them in their recycling bins. Please don't. Thank you. So materials roll over the top, but glass is going to hit into those metal rods and break into small pieces. And those small pieces fall through openings in between the disc screens. So they fall through and then are caught by another conveyor belt below that takes them out the back. And that's how we sort the glass. But maybe you're looking at all that stuff and you're saying, wait a minute, that's not just glass. There's a whole lot of different stuff in there. Yes. Anything smaller than about 2 inches in 2 dimensions will fall through the screens and end up in the glass stream. This is not only true at SIMS, this is true at MRFs in general. You know, I've come to call it the 2-inch rule. I think other people have as well. But if it's smaller than 2 inches, it ends up with the glass. So the glass stream then usually goes to another sorting facility. In New York City, it definitely goes to another sorting facility where we sort the contaminants out of the glass and sort the glass by color. And while we are able to recover metals from this stream, and we are able to see that they actually are recycled, plastics, small pieces of plastic that end up in this stream, they generally end up as waste. They're very challenging to effectively sort, and there's not a great market for them. So if we can't sell it, we can't afford the technology to sort it. So that's where the challenge comes in there. So it's a sad story of small plastics, but generally they're waste. They're doomed for landfill or incineration. So that is glass. Metals. To sort metals, we have a giant spinning magnet. And this is common. Most MRFs are going to have some sort of magnet. So our magnet's going to attract all ferrous metal and drop it onto another conveyor belt. Pretty simple. We actually have 2 of these. We call them our drum magnets. But as not all metal is magnetic, we need a process to sort the non-magnetic, the non-ferrous metal as well. So for that, we use an eddy current. Now, I am not a physics person, so I give the very simplified description of an eddy current. But the easiest way, I think, to understand it, it works like a reverse magnet, you know, or an opposite magnet. The soda cans and aluminum foil that are not magnetic, they don't stick, but they receive a magnetic charge, and then they actually get repelled by that eddy current, as you saw in the video, over a barrier onto another conveyor belt. I personally quite enjoy inanimate objects suddenly flying through the air. I like watching that eddy current. So that's metal, that's glass. For plastics and cartons, we use optical scanners. So these are like very fancy cameras. You can think of them that way. Materials fly by on the conveyor belt, and they pass under this little line of light right here. That is the optical scanner. That optical scanner is using near infrared light to identify the chemical makeup of those materials as they fly by. So it can tell, oh, that's PET plastic, or that's HDPE plastic, that's HDPE color, you know, different types of plastic, even the color, or that's a carton, or that's paper, or that's a contaminant. We can set it to look for all sorts of qualities. So when it finds what we program it to look for, it turns on a jet of air at the end of the conveyor, that shoots that recyclable through the air onto another conveyor belt. And it all happens in a fraction of a second. So the scanning and then the queuing of the air jet and the shooting, it's very, very fast. And I actually have a slow-mo of it here so we can watch. So this line of light is the camera. This is looking for things like this jug. So that will shoot up, that green thing will shoot up, everything else goes out and down. You can kind of see it slowly getting sucked up the top.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's fun.
It's really cool.
So these are very cool, but they come with their limitations. One of them is black or near black plastics. So the near infrared scanners, they're essentially bouncing light off of materials. Light's not going to bounce off of black plastic. So black plastic, it doesn't get identified usually by these scanners, and it usually ends up as waste. Additionally, plastics that are covered in a shrink sleeve or a shrink wrap. This is a delicious beverage, but this is a PET bottle. This is probably an LDPE label. There is no market for LDPE, so we don't have a scanner set to look for it. That's what our scanners will see. It probably won't shoot. It won't be properly sorted. So, people ask me a lot about labels. Should I take out the label? What should I do about the label? I say, only remove the label if it's covering the entire container. Then removing it can help that item's chance of being truly recycled. Okay. So, of course, all of that technology is not going to be perfect. So the last step at our facility would be quality control. Human workers do a final check of the material lines. Now, in many MRFs, in smaller MRFs especially, humans are often the first line of defense. But for us, for just our material flow, we found that last was best for when to best use the human power. So then after the sort is complete, we make bales. Our baler compresses the materials into these tightly compact rectangles, each one weighing anywhere from 13 to over 1,400 pounds. And that is what we make. That's what a MRF makes. We make bales. We make a variety of bales. These are only a few. So these are some of the plastic bales we make, PET, soda bottles and water bottles, HDPE, jugs, HDPE color, jugs and shampoo bottles that are dyed a color, PP or polypropylene plastic, that's going to be your yogurt cups, to-go containers, Tupperware, butter tubs and the like, and then steel and aluminum, our ferrous and non-ferrous. And just know, these materials have different values, and those values will change over time. It is a volatile market. Right now, the market is okay. Things are looking all right. But one challenge we're facing is, while the values are looking okay, people in New York City have also started putting a lot more trash in their recycling bin, and that actually costs us money. So while people are putting more recyclables in, they're also putting in more trash. So not a great situation. And do remember, materials without a strong market, they can't be sold. So we can't sort them out. If it's not widely recyclable, like plastic film, like plastic bags, we can't install great technology to sort it because that costs money and no one wants to buy it. So we don't have any money for it. So it all kind of works its way into this cycle, going back to, the wheel from the beginning. So once we bale materials up, they leave, sometimes on trains or rail cars, sometimes on trucks. This forklift is driving materials right onto the back of a truck. Some materials will go out loose on barges, like glass or bulky metal. And then the materials go on for reprocessing and manufacturing. So that water bottle that you recycled, it's going to be chopped up into flakes, washed, sanitized, the whole jazz, and then melted, extruded, and chopped up into those little pellets that you see there. Those pellets might be used to make more water bottles, maybe. But it's more common that they are used to make clothing or carpeting. That is a common fate for your PET plastic, your soda bottles and water bottles. And a lot of people don't like that because it's not bottle to bottle, right? It's not a perfect circle, right? How many places do you know to recycle a carpet? I know they exist, but I don't know where they are, and I know a lot about recycling. But the other part of that argument is that, you get a water bottle, you're going to use it for 10 minutes, an hour, and then you dispose of it again. But a carpet, it could be in use for 5, maybe 10 years, many years. So it becomes waste after much more time and use has gone into it. Colorful plastic, similar process, chopped up into flakes, turned into pellets, but it's colorful. And there isn't currently an ability to remove color from plastic in the mechanical recycling process. This is what we call the current process for recycling plastics, mechanical recycling. So colorful plastics are usually mixed together, often to form a black plastic, often used for these drainage pipes. So there'll be very long pipes, very big pipes, and that's a very, very common use of these colorful plastics. Metals can be recycled endlessly. Metals can be used to make whatever that is made of that same type of metal. I do want to be clear though, just because it's endlessly recyclable, that also doesn't mean it's better. Often metal will have a higher environmental impact or use more energy than plastic or be heavier. It is endlessly recyclable, but that doesn't make it king. So metal will be smelted. Aluminum, you can use it to make more aluminum cans, of course, but it could also be a part of a bicycle. It could be a part of an airplane. It could be a gutter on your house. It could be a hubcap, anything made of aluminum. You can use aluminum cans to make it. So glass, if it's clear glass, it's probably going to end up in a glass furnace and be reblown into another glass bottle or jar. Glass that's dyed a color, if it's brown or green, it might be another glass bottle or jar, depending on what the bottlers want to buy. But if it's dyed a color, there's more of a chance it will end up as a construction aggregate or filler. Like we actually used recycled glass aggregate at SIMS to raise our facility above the 100-year flood line. We are surrounded by water on 3 sides, so we wanted to try to protect ourselves from rising sea levels. So the last thing I want to make clear about this process, just the kind of design element of it, is this part of the process, when the stuff is melted and chopped up, especially for plastics, when you chop it up and melt it, all of the material attributes have an impact at this point. So what kinds of inks are on that plastic? Are they going to turn all the plastic a weird color and make it so no one wants to use it? Or what kind of label is on there? Is it going to properly remove, or is it going to get stuck? What kind of adhesive did you use to keep that label on there? Is it going to get all sticky and gum up all the operations? What kind of color, what kind of decoration? Everything comes into play here. And all in all, simplicity is key. You want to design something recyclable, make it out of one type of material and as simple as possible. That maybe is not what you want to hear as a designer, but that's the surefire way to make it recyclable.
Well, it's good. It's good for people to hear this.
Right. There it is. There's a lot of words on here, and I just go by it fast, just dropping these ideas into your brains. So I mentioned mechanical recycling. This is the way we recycle plastics. You might at some point hear about chemical recycling. It's been in the background. It's been in talks for a long time, but it does offer, potentially ways of recycling difficult to recycle plastics. It may offer more options for plastic recycling, but right now it's really still in research and development. It's not quite, it's just not ready yet. Very expensive, and I don't think it's quite energy efficient yet, from what I know. But also, reuse and refill programs. Maybe one day they'll trump recycling. Who knows? There are a lot of great programs, though, getting started for reuse and refill, like Loop, which is a program hosted by TerraCycle. Here in New York City, we have Deliver Zero, reusable takeout containers. We have Cup Zero. We have a lot of great programs starting up that, it's just stuff you reuse it. You don't even have to recycle it. Great. Extended producer responsibility. This is a piece of legislation being proposed in many states, including New York State. It puts the financial responsibility of managing something once it's waste back on the producer, basically. So that financial responsibility has fallen onto municipalities, onto our tax dollars. So when you pay for something, when you buy it, you're paying for it twice, once when you buy it and once when you throw it away. So this will shift that a bit. But overall, my last message for designers is know your life cycle analyses, know the materials you're using and where they come from and what impact they have. I know that's complicated, but just try to learn to know. And ultimately design for the environment, not just for recycling. So glad you had me. I'm so glad you care about recycling, but just know recycling alone is not enough. We have to look at the full bigger picture. Often that full bigger picture is the reduce and reuse thing, and then recycling coming in third, but also designing for circularity, designing for the environment. Yes, reduce, reuse, and then as a last resort, recycle is what we say.
Exactly.
For you today. I'll leave this up just for
Kara.
one more moment if you want to grab my email if you have more questions, or look us up online.
Kara, this is awesome, and there's been a lot of great questions in the chat. So
yeah, thank you so much, Kara, for that. That was really, really wonderful, and thank you to the other 2 panelists. So yeah, as Bernd says, we got quite a few comments in the comment section, and to anyone who hasn't added anything yet, feel free to drop them in there, and we'll have our expert Kara here answer them for you.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to show Kara's great slide here. talking about how individual choices make a collective impact and vice versa as well, not just the other way around. And yeah, thank you, Celeste. We're going to be holding our Q&A section now.
Cool. So let's see. Alexander Barrett has asked, why can't the plastics that are smaller than 2 inches just be melted to then be recycled?
Yeah, they probably could be, but I think there are a few challenges. One, you get a mixed bag of a lot of different types of plastic that you would then need to sort out. You know, maybe you could sort the plastic out from the glass, but then you sort the PET from the HDPE, from the this, from the that, from the stuff that no one really wants to buy. And that's difficult when it's so small, especially when it's dirty, especially when it's wet. There's a lot of little details that make it very difficult to sort and expensive to sort. And since there's not a lot of people that are like, yeah, give me a bag of really tiny pieces of plastic, there are companies asking for that. It's just not happening. It might in the next 5 to 10 years. I can't really make that prediction with a lot of confidence, but right now it's not.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kara, and thanks, Alex, for Alex, I'm already friends over here, for asking that question. Then we have Celeste, hello, like me. Nice to meet you, other Celeste, asking, so if the plastic label is completely covering the plastic bottle, it goes into landfill, or what happens to it?
It might. That will depend on a few things. That will depend on, is the plastic label a type of plastic we are sorting for? It might be, but usually it's not. Usually the shrink wrap is LDPE number 4 plastic, but it might be a type we're sorting, in which case we might sort for it, but it might end up, still the bottle might end up in the wrong place. It gets messy.
Yeah.
It gets very messy. But if the label only covers, I think, 75% of the bottle, if that's the magic number at this point, then it's okay. Or if the label is transparent, if you can see through it enough, then it also might be sorted correctly. But if it is sorted incorrectly, yes, there's a good chance it will end up in the landfill. Sadly.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kara. Let's see, Kenny Arnold here is asking, how do you sell the bales? Do you create contracts based on commodity prices and commit to the manufacturer for X amount of time? Curious if you could shed some light on the post-sorting process.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of long-term contracts, but we do have regular customers. We do have long-term relationships, I guess you could say, and customers we've been working with for a long time that know that we are in New York City, and so we have a big, consistent supply, which maybe is a good thing and maybe is not such a good thing. But that's, I think, primarily how our relationships are kept up, or one way. Not a lot of long-term contracts.
Thanks, Kara and Kenny.
Has that changed, Kara, since
COVID?
Yeah, exactly. Since the legislation in China, when they decided they weren't going to, how I know the thinking was at the time that it was better in the long term for us to sort it out, but there was kind of some growing pains as the U.S. tried to figure out where to put it. So have you guys gotten to the point now where you're able to disseminate it on within this continent, rather than always once China stopped, you had to kind of figure it out. So how did that go? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for us at SIMS, we're not selling our plastics to companies in China. So we were sort of in the clear. We didn't lose customers during National Sword when China stopped importing recyclables. We didn't lose customers, but of course we were impacted by market shifts and by values plummeting, because there was a glut in the market of all these plastics that were going to China, and then suddenly we're struggling to find buyers. So that's more what affected and impacted us. But we, our buyers for plastic are primarily domestic. There's a couple in Eastern Canada, but they were already mostly in North America.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question here from Noor saying, if you're unsure whether something is recyclable or not, is it better to just throw it in the trash?
I have 2 rhymes for you. The old rhyme used to be, when in doubt, throw it out. And I get that. We don't want people wish cycling and just willy-nilly throwing things in the recycling bin because like, oh, it might be recyclable. Yeah, it also might cause really big problems at the MRF or for the reprocessor. So when in doubt, throw it out was the catchphrase. But now I'm really pushing when in doubt, find out. You know, do an internet search. I bet you can figure it out. I bet you can. Your local municipality, they want you to recycle right because it costs them money if you don't. So they probably have a list of items that you can access on the internet. So when in doubt, find out. And if you can't and you're just baffled, then okay, you throw it in the trash is probably the safe thing to do.
Yeah. It often also says it on the packaging.
Ooh, you can't always follow that.
Ignore what I just said, everybody. I don't know who said that.
I mean, the little let's see if I have a package. The how to recycle label, this label, it's called the how to recycle label. That one's pretty good. You know, this one here, where is it? This one here is telling you it's not recyclable. This is telling you it's a paper box, which is recyclable in most recycling. It's just a paper. It's a cardboard box. Most recycling programs are going to take this. So that how to recycle label is pretty good. But if a package just says recyclable, like I buy these, sorry, quick story. I buy these sugar bags. It's a soft bag. It's soft. And it says on it, recyclable packaging. And I have it on my counter because I keep meaning to call them and saying, what gives? You know, no, there are no, even if this is a material that has a market, there are no MRFs that can effectively process or can sort out the soft plastic. It gets tangled in our equipment and it's really problematic. So just because something says it's recyclable, sadly, that doesn't mean it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
So when in doubt, find out, but not on the packaging.
Yeah. Look it up. Look up your local municipality's list. That's what you need to look up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe even find out before throwing out, before buying it as well.
Yeah.
I found a plastic bag recently that said it was biodegradable and recyclable. And I'm like, what? Come on now. Let's figure this out.
I don't think
So it was saying that it was made out of LDPE, but that it was held together with pieces that were biodegradable. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So,
yeah, that's confusing to me. That confuses me. Yeah. I'm doubtful. I question that.
Here we have another question from the other Celeste asking if it's cheaper for companies like Unilever, for instance, to make their packaging from recycled materials or from virgin ones. If the latter, what's the incentive for companies to use recycled plastic?
Yeah, so usually recycled plastic is more expensive. So what's happening now, the virgin material is generally cheaper. Sometimes it is significantly cheaper. That depends on a lot of factors. But what's happening now is states are passing legislation and requiring certain items to be made with a certain amount of recycled content. California passed this legislation. I think Washington, New Jersey is working on passing this. So the incentives are probably going to come from legislation. EPR, extended producer responsibility, is another legislation that may assist in that as well. Incentivize.
Great. And then finally, at least for now, unless any other questions come in later on, we have a question from Javier asking, how did you manage to get the trash management companies to give you trash to your SIMS? Is it government supervised?
So I'll talk about how we operate with New York City. So SIMS Municipal Recycling is a private company, and we have a public-private partnership with the City of New York. We work very closely with New York City's Department of Sanitation. So years ago, they put out a request for proposal for a company to, build and operate the city's recycling facility, the city's MRF. We put in a proposal. We won the contract. So we began our partnership, our public-private partnership. And that's it's a 20-year contract with the potential to extend another 10 and then 10 years. And that's just how we operate. But private companies, in New York City, there are a number of private waste companies as well. And they collect from businesses, office buildings, stores. You know, the city only collects waste from homes and public schools. That's just how we work in New York City. But businesses have to hire private waste companies to collect their waste. So the private waste companies have to jump through some other hoops, I believe, to get licensed and operate in New York City. And that is all shifting right now because the piece of legislation recently passed that's going to sort of change how private waste companies operate in New York City. That's also, I could talk about that for a long time, but I won't. But feel free to email me.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for your questions. That's a good thing to end on. If you do have any questions, any further questions, you're welcome to, as Kara says, email her or get in touch with any of us. We have, you can go to our website, circulareconomymfg.com. That's there in the right corner. Yeah, and then there you can subscribe to our newsletter. We always have really good sort of not to brag, but really good content, and yeah, and you can follow us on our social medias there, which you can find at the bottom of the website.
And podcasts now.
Sorry.
And podcasts.
And podcasts, yeah, we'll be able to, if you have any further questions, if you want to check out any resources that were mentioned on this workshop, we'll be soon we post the webpage after every workshop that we do with all the resources that were mentioned, the podcast, the recording of the workshop. So we'll be sending that out to subscribe to our newsletter to find out when that's coming out. All right then.
Sure, this was terrific. I hope that people can one day visit in person your facility. It's a great tour that you gave, but it's quite another level of sensory experience to hear it, to smell it, to see it, to absorb it all, and to really see the immense quantity of materials that you guys are processing. And it's incredible what you're doing, but I hope it also gets people to pause and to think, wait a minute, this is an enormous amount of material. And this is just what we're getting and what you guys are able to collect. Think of all the stuff. It isn't.
Yeah, you described it as 200 medium elephants, but I can't even imagine what that looks like. It's this amount of plastic is just massive.
There's another 200 elephants that end up in the trash. New Yorkers only put about 50% of what they could into the correct recycling bin. So there's another 1,000 tons of metal, glass, plastic that's getting thrown out.
So many elephants. So many.
The poor elephant.
I learned we go on this tour every year, and I learn something every time you present, Kara. So it's terrific having you again. I'm glad we're able to kind of put this out into the world now, and more people can see and hopefully understand all the ramifications of the materials that we're churning through. You shared with our class at the height of the pandemic, it was up to what, 1,400 tons
1,400 tons a day. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think that was in the summer. I think that was in the July after everything began. Yeah.
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 I think so many more.
I'm so glad we got some options now with Loop and Deliver Zero, and so yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff.
Thank you so much, Kara. This has been absolutely amazing. I've been on this digital tour once, and I'm just as amazed and blown away as the first time. So thank you so much for being here with us on this workshop.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Reduce, reuse, and then recycle.
Yes.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night. Thanks for joining.